Hey folks, welcome back to Game Geeks. I'm your host, Kurt Wiegel. Sorry for our delay and hiatus there. End of the semester, we have families. I know you're tired of hearing the excuses, but the reality of it is life happens sometimes, and occasionally life happens all over your face, and you just got to deal with it. So what we're going to be talking about today and for the next several episodes are supplements for the Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition game. From the review that you saw, I heartily liked, and I think holds up really well in all of the books that have been published so far. To the best of my knowledge, I currently have all of the D&D 5th edition products that have been made by Wizards of the Coast. I don't have all the third-party stuff. I'm not going that far. I'm keeping it within just what Wizards has made. So, what we're going to start off with today is the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide. Now, as it says on the title, this is a very specific focus in on a campaign setting in a region of the Forgotten Realms. For those of you who don't know, the Forgotten Realms is the brainchild of Ed Greenwood, who was as a campaign setting that he had been developing for quite a while to set his adventures in. When TSR had a falling out with Gary Gygax, they couldn't use much of Greyhawk anymore, which is sort of their default setting. They went looking for a new one, and they landed on the Forgotten Realms. I've not always been the biggest Forgotten Realms fan, mainly because of the sheer amount of splat and supplements and this book and that book that you had to have for it. Plus, there were most of the parts of the realms that they heavily emphasize I just didn't care for. The Dale Lands, for example, have like this incredibly high-level archmage who lives there, which I know he's not always there to solve your problems for you, but if there's ever a major breach, he's going to be there to fix it. That was just a small realism problem that I didn't care for. And that kind of grew into every other barmaid was a 12th level mage that was running around that you had to find something to do with. What happened in 4th edition was, in my opinion, they kind of broke the realms. They took out pieces of it, they put in something new, there was this huge planar shift of 2 planets doing this, kind of making a fringe out of it, and random crap happened. For 5th edition, they kind of fixed what was broken, in my opinion. So what do you get in the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide? Well, kind of just what it says. This deal focuses in on one part of the realms, the western coast of the main continent of Faerun. Now, this takes us from Luxan down to Tether, from the north to the south, and from the Sea of Storms all the way over to the Stormhorn Mountains. It doesn't give us a lot on Cormyr or anything west of the Stormhorns. However, anything east of the Stormhorns, excuse me. However, it does give us quite a bit of information on the Moonshaes, which are this big set of Celtic-flavored islands over to the western side of the Sea of Storms. Interestingly, the Darkwalker on Moonshae, the first book, is one of the first Forgotten Realms book, was actually the first Forgotten Realms product, predating the release of the campaign setting by about a month. Small bit of trivia for you there. Now, what you have for this, one of the reasons I love this book is it is 4/5 fluff. It is almost entirely fluff for the campaign setting. There are no new, oh, you have this subrace you can play, or oh, there are all these new classes, or all these new options, etc. Guys, literally, you don't get to the crunch in this book until page 121 out of 157. That's how much of this book is just background information, setting information. So if you're a crunch-heavy kind of rulesy guy, this is not the book for you. But if you enjoy just learning about the environment and what's going on now, it's a great place to be. It's a great book to have. Now, one of the things it doesn't do is it doesn't give you a lot of detail, but there's a little bit of detail on some of the other regions as well. For example, the Dale Lands, Thay, Cormyr, Termish, etc., Implater, they all get maybe a paragraph on what's going on in there now, which, if you think about it, was all that the original Forgotten Realms box set gave you for places like Narfell, Damara, etc. You get a lot of focus in here. You get a lot of the city-states. One of the things about the far western part of that continent is there are very few big empires or very few big kingdoms. There are a lot of city-states that get along in various degrees or not in wilderness. Almost 1,000 points of light that came out of 4th edition. The other thing that's really cool here is there are no NPC stats. None of them. So it'll talk about major characters like Illustriel of Silvery Moon or Terran Hornblade of Silvery Moon. It doesn't tell you just how powerful they are. So if you really want to, you can have your players curb stomp these people. Why? But it's there if you want to. A lot of good detail, a lot of good information in there. Not being my favorite part of the realms, I'm not going to dive into like explicit detail about this and that. It would take several episodes to do that. But the one thing I do want to talk about is the crunch that it does give you. I know I just bitched about that, but the crunch that it does give you toward the back of it. Like I said, only shows up at the very back of the book. What it does is it gives you, and this is still in the fluff section, but it gives you information about the specific races of the realms. Like what the different levels of, elf have their own sub-races now, or different names on them. It's basically the same stuff with the serial numbers filed off, but that you find in the 5th edition book. But it just gives it more information there. The dwarves, all the main races that are in the 5th edition rulebook are there in various levels of detail. The classes are where you started to get into some new stuff. So there are new subpaths for your classes. Like Barbarian now gets Totem, it gets a Totem Shaman or Totem Warrior aspect and a Battle Rager, which is sort of, for those of you who don't know, a Battle Rager is a Dwarf Barbarian who wears spiky pointy armor that does extra damage. Like they get an extra action to try to hurt someone with their spiky pointy armor in combat. It's not huge, but it's there. So there are the new paths. There are some brand new stuff that comes out in there too. There's a new path, I can't think of what it's specifically called for Paladins, Oath maybe. There's a new Oath for Paladins, which is more about civilization and goodness than it is light and life or vengeance and stuff like that. There are, in the fighter path, you also have the Purple Dragon Knight contained in there. And the motherfucking Blade Singer raises its ugly head again. I have a bias against Blade Singers like you would not believe. Every Blade Singer that has ever been in any game in 2nd or 3rd edition that I have played or that I have GM'd have completely screwed up that game. So Blade Singers are out for me, period. Just don't even ask, they're not there. Finally, and probably my favorite part of this book, is the fact that the last several pages are dedicated to, all right, maybe you don't like the realms. Let's say you like Dragonlance a lot. Here's how some of these new things, the new crunch that are given here for Forgotten Realms, can be applied to the Dragonlance setting. The Purple Dragon Knights, easily a Knight of the Rose for the Knights of Solamnia. One of the new paths for Paladin, a Knight of the Sword for the Knights of Solamnia. New wizard stuff. Some of the new spells can be ported into some of these other settings. Now, Dragonlance is probably a weird one to pick because of all the wizard crap that goes on, like the Test of High Sorcery at 3rd level and blah, blah, blah. But it also gives you this information for Greyhawk, Eberron, and how to chunk it into your own homemade worlds. That, to me, was very impressive. Because what that's saying is, we're not going to charge you a bunch of new money for a Dragonlance book that you may or may not need. Here's how you can use the stuff in here as applied to your other settings. That won my heart in this book. I thought it was a great idea that Wizards included in this particular tome, was that ability of multiple usage in different settings. So no longer is it specific just for realms, and if you try to pull it out, the bad, wrong, fun police are going to come and find you and beat you with dice bags for it. Now it gives you open license to put it into your own campaign settings. I like it, even though it doesn't necessarily focus in on my favorite parts of the realms. I find it utterly and thoroughly mineable for ideas both in the fluff and in the crunch pieces of it itself. For Game Geeks, I'm your host, Kurt Wiegel. Good day and good gaming.